Hi, my name's James Tizard. I'm a PhD student from the University of Auckland, and I'm here to talk to you about our paper, Voice of the Users, a demographic study of software feedback behavior. So a lot of attention is given to the feedback that software users write online on channels such as app stores, product forums, and social media. Developers use this feedback as an important source of requirements to guide the development of their products. And it's a popular focus of research for requirements engineering researchers. So this feedback has been called the voice of the users. However, presumably only a subset of software users will actually give online feedback. So we had to ask, how representative is this feedback? We saw a danger that the views and desires of less vocal users might be missed, and therefore not taken into consideration in the development process. So there has been some previous work looking into who are the software users that write online feedback. So in one paper, Guzman and Paredes looked at the software users who give feedback to the Apple App Store. They inferred the gender of the feedback givers from their usernames. They found that a slight majority of men compared to women wrote the feedback on the Apple App Store. In another study from Guzman et al., they looked at the differences in feedback between the countries of 8 Apple App Stores. They found significant differences in the content, the length, the sentiment, and the rating of the feedback. So we saw potential to build on this work. For example, these previous studies had looked at the Apple App Store. So we wanted to see if we can investigate additional feedback channels. Secondly, we wanted to see if we could look at additional demographics or even more detailed demographics such as age. So one of the challenges with investigating who is writing online feedback is that on these channels, there's not a lot of information that's available. So to get around this problem, we decided to directly survey software users about their feedback giving habits. Our survey was guided by 3 high-level research questions. Number 1, what are the demographics of software users who give feedback online? Number 2, what motivates feedback givers to give feedback? And number 3, is there an association between software use and feedback giving habits? Okay, so we sent out our survey, and in total we got 1,040 survey responses. The majority of those responses came from our home countries of New Zealand and Germany. So on the slide here, we've got a breakdown of the demographics of those who responded. So starting on the left here, we have the gender of the respondents. So slightly more men responded to the survey than women. In terms of age, those between 18 and 34 were the most common to respond to our survey. And with respect to ethnicity, mostly European and Asian survey users responded. Okay, so here we've got some of our findings. I'm not going to talk through all the findings from our paper. So if you're interested in this work, I really encourage you to go and have a look. So on the slide here, we've got the percentage of feedback givers out of all the respondents who said they had previously given written feedback. We've split it by the 3 channels that we looked at: app stores in blue, forums in orange, and social media in grey. So the most commonly cited channel that our respondents had given feedback to was app stores, with 18% of respondents saying they had previously given feedback. Then product forums and social media was least. Okay, on the right here we have the number of channels that the respondents said they had engaged with. So the majority said they hadn't previously given written feedback. Of those who had given written feedback, most had just engaged with one of the online channels, and much fewer on 2 or 3 of them. Okay, so we had some interesting findings with respect to age. So here on the x-axis, we have the demographics with respect to the age of respondents. And on the y-axis, we have the percentage of each of those groups that said they had previously written feedback. Again, the feedback is broken up with respect to the 3 channels: app stores in blue, product forums in orange, social media in grey. So respondents between the age of 35 and 44 reported to give the most feedback across the 3 channels we looked at. Conversely, respondents under 18 reported to give the least feedback across 3 channels. And interestingly, none of the 18-year-olds we talked to said they had ever given feedback to product forums. Another interesting trend you can see here is that respondents under 24 really preferred to give feedback to app stores, whereas those over 24 started to write on product forums more, and even sometimes more than they wrote on app stores. Okay, so here's some findings with respect to gender. So on the chart here, we've got men are represented in blue and women are represented in red. So men reported to us that they gave feedback at a higher rate than women across all 3 channels. This difference was the biggest in product forums, where men reported to give feedback almost twice as often as women did. The smallest difference was on social media, where the difference became much smaller. Okay, one kind of side result that came out of the survey was we asked the participants whether they currently or previously had worked in the software industry. So we found that these software professionals reported to give feedback at a much higher rate than non-professionals across all 3 channels. So we saw this as maybe software professionals have more insight into the development process and therefore may be more motivated to give feedback. Okay, going on to our second high-level question, we wanted to see what motivates users to give online feedback. So in the survey, we gave the participants a set of possible motivations and asked them to pick the motivations that best applied to them. Again, here we're split up by feedback channel, and I've also only listed the top motivations, but there are more that weren't shown. So show appreciation for the software was the highest cited motivation on app stores and on social media, whereas get help with the software was the top cited motivation on product forums, although show appreciation still came in at number 3. Another really motivating factor for our respondents was influencing an improvement in the software. You can see that influence improvement came in at number 3 across all 3 channels. We also looked at the effectiveness of in-app prompts at eliciting mobile app feedback. So on the chart here, we have the percentage of our respondents who said they had previously given a star rating on the left here, and then previously given written feedback to the App Store on the right. The top light blue part of the bar shows those users who only gave the feedback when they were prompted to. On the right, so you can see that the prompts were really effective at getting star ratings and not as effective at getting written feedback. And another interesting takeaway here is if you remove the effect of the prompt from the written feedback rate, it drops to around 12%, which was similar to the rate that the respondents said they wrote on product forums. So this suggests that our respondents were equally motivated to write on app stores and product forums. However, the wide use of in-app prompts and mobile applications kind of pushes them ahead. Okay, moving on to our final high-level question. We wanted to see if there was an association between the software being used and feedback habits. So on the left here, we have the computer operating system being used. So Linux users reported to us that they were much more likely to give feedback to app stores and product forums than users of Windows and Mac. Windows and Mac users gave feedback at similar rates across all 3 channels. So when we looked at the data, we also found a link between those who said they were Linux users were much more likely to be software professionals. So this kind of emphasizes that these Linux users are maybe more technical users with more insight into the development process. Okay, so on the right here, we have feedback with respect to phone type. So this was perhaps a more surprising result. So Android users told us that they gave feedback to app stores at a much higher rate than iPhone users. We're not really sure for the reason between these, between these feedback rates. So this might be an interesting avenue for future work. Okay, finally, we looked at daily software use to see if it had an association to feedback. So on the left here, we have hours of daily computer use, and we found a linear association between computer use and likelihood to give feedback to product forums. So you can see here, those that use their computer less than 4 hours a day gave the least feedback, going up to those who used their computer more than 8 hours a day gave the most feedback. With phones, we found an association between phone use and social media feedback. So again, least phone use correlated to the least social media feedback, going up to most phone use gave the most social media feedback. Interestingly, we didn't find a distinct pattern between phone use and App Store feedback. Okay, so those are the findings. So from those, we see a few high-level implications. So our findings indicate that there are differences in the demographics that engage with each of the 3 channels that we looked at: app stores, product forums, social media. And there are also significant motivation differences to engage with each of those platforms. So we would argue this means that it could be important to leverage as many of these feedback channels as possible to get the most representative feedback from a software user base. Secondly, our findings suggest that there are some demographics that are less likely to engage with feedback channels. Therefore, it might be beneficial to investigate new elicitation methods to try and engage with those underrepresented groups. Finally, our work suggested that in-app mobile prompts are really good at eliciting feedback, and therefore they might be effective if they were more widely applied in the computer software domain. Also, more work may need to be done on how to use in-app prompts to elicit detailed feedback, such as written reviews. Okay, so in conclusion, we surveyed software users to find out about their feedback giving habits. In total, we surveyed 1,040 software users, mostly from our home countries of New Zealand and Germany. Our findings indicate that there were demographic differences in the users who give online feedback, including significant differences in the ages and the gender of those users who are inclined to give feedback. Secondly, we identified key motivation differences between demographics to give feedback, but also key differences in the motivation to engage with each of the 3 channels that we looked at: app stores, product forums, social media. Finally, we found some interesting associations between the software platform being used and feedback giving habits, and also daily software use and feedback habits. So in terms of future work, it should be interesting to investigate why some demographics of software users are less inclined to give feedback. And building on that, new elicitation methods could be investigated to try and engage with those underrepresented groups. Finally, this study could be replicated in additional countries and populations beyond New Zealand and Germany. We're actually really interested in extending this work. And so to end with, I'd like to see if there's, to encourage anyone who's interested in this work and would be able to translate the survey from English into a language that would help us engage with Latin American populations, Middle Eastern, African, or Pacific. And also we are interested in a new distribution path to get the survey out there. Cool, thanks a lot.